If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then the UK Property Market Stat Show is for you. My name is Christopher Watkin, and each week I do a show on what's happening in the UK property market. I'm also joined by a special guest each week, and this week it's Kristian Stott. We'll come to Stotty in a second. Why should you watch this show? Well, if you're an estate agent, you want to attract homeowners and landlords to you, and 36% of homeowners chose their estate agent based on their agent's property market knowledge. So again, this show will give you that knowledge that you can make yourself look awesome to homeowners. If you are a landlord or someone who's interested in the property market, the stats are going to be interesting to you as well. Why are they interesting? Because the British are obsessed about the property market. Now, we measure the property market using various different metrics. Some people use the land registry figures. Problem is that they're looking at data that's 8, 9, 10 months old. Some people look at the Halifax and nationwide data, and they're looking at sales that were agreed 2 or 3 months ago. We're looking at last week. And by looking at last week about what's happening in the property market, to listings, sales agreed, fall-throughs, exchanges, and also what's happening to house prices, then you'll have a better idea of what is happening out there, so you can give the best advice or use that information to your own advantage when buying and selling property. We're looking at week 5 of 2025, which, just for the benefit of everyone, is Monday the 3rd of February all the way through and including Sunday the 9th of February. We will be comparing week 5 against other week 5s. We'll also be looking at the year-to-date figures compared to other year-to-date figures going back all the way to 2017. The show itself will last approximately 1 hour. And the first half looks at, as I said, at the UK property market. The second half focuses on a town or a city where we really deep dive and have a look at how well the estate agents perform. This week, we're going to Eastbourne. Now, if you're an Eastbourne estate or letting agent, you'll be all over that. However, if you're an estate agent who's not in Eastbourne, you might be tempted not to watch that. However, we are going to be using a piece of kit which proves which estate agent is the best, using lots of different metrics. And if you're an estate agent who's battling overvaluing from your competitors or cheap fees, and you really are better and you believe you're better and the stats back you up, then you could use this bit of kit yourself to prove that you are a better estate agent, get higher fees, and stop losing listings. More of that in a second when we get to Eastbourne. Stotty, great to have you back on the show, mate.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Stotty is a very rare breed of an estate agent who is a bit of a techie as well. And he actually knows what he's talking about. He used to run an absolutely massive estate agency chain in the Midlands. And at the moment, he's working on a few projects in the industry that will help estate agents using the power of AI and tech. He's a man that I trust. He's absolutely fantastic. And he's a regular co-presenter on the show.
You are too kind.
Bless you, child. You'll go far this well. Right, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, let us deep dive into the first part of the show where we go and look at the UK property market this week. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's kick off with listings. And year to date, we are on 168,500, which is 11% higher than the year to date figure of 2024 and 10.8% ahead of the more normal years of 17, 18 and 19. Number of listings this week, 36,536. The average listing price is 403,407. And there is that nice graph which just basically shows us where we are year to date compared to other years to date. The white line is 2025, and then you've got years 17, 18, 19, 23, and 24. Okay, Stotty, what's your thoughts on listings, mate?
I love seeing numbers of new instructions. Let's hope it's not a red queen. I guess sales agreed comes a few graphs down where we can start to see whether agents are just filling their walls or whether they're filling their pipeline. I think, yeah, great numbers looking at them. And, you know, the white wine is white wine. There we go. That's Freudian. The white line is deliberately thicker than the others, but the actual trajectory at the moment looks really, really good for the year ahead, doesn't it?
That's nice, isn't it? So again, it must be remembered, ladies and gentlemen, that week 1 was started off a little bit later than other week ones. So therefore, the number started off high, but as the weeks have gone on, we have been correspondingly higher. And again, as I said, it is deliberately wider, but there's
Is it? Do you think stamp duty's linked to it? Is that the driver,
well,
or
if estate agents are putting houses on the market to get houses sold for the stamp duty, then I'm sorry, I'm calling BS on that one. But that's not like estate agents to give some BS or some false promise to get the houses on the market, is it? Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Maybe they've got to sell now to move in by Christmas, Chris.
Yeah, which Christmas? Just just again, for those who have not watched the show before, ladies and gentlemen, you can see here that the trends for listings is very, very stays the same. In the fact that we will probably go on to around 35, 36, 37,000 all the way until the end of March. Then we'll have 3 dips, which are the 2 the Easter and the 2 spring bank holidays. And then she'll slowly drift down. There's the August bank holiday. They always bounce back up and then a slow drift down. I find it absolutely amazing that the property market is almost like a metronome. Okay, there might be just slightly higher or slightly lower, but fundamentally it all kind of stays the same.
It's lovely to see how humans influence the data, isn't it? The choices that we make and the pivotal moments in each of our years, kids at school, kids leaving home at Christmas, Easter, all the different things that go on, controls the data for us, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And what is interesting is I have this data split down regionally, and there is only one region in the residential sales market that has broken rank. Okay.
Is that London, is it?
No, the Southwest.
Right, okay. That's an interesting
one.
Yeah,
big time, yeah. London house prices and London number of house sales is towards the bottom end of the run in the last couple of years in terms of growth. It's interesting that, I know you know this, but my daytime job is I create content for local estate agents on the local property markets. And the ones that, we're comparing the sales in Jan for 24, 25 and 23 for the town, because we got the stats on that. And what is interesting is that London, a good area in London has stayed the same compared to last year.
Right.
Whilst a good area outside London has improved by about 20%.
Wow.
So I find that absolutely fascinating. And what there is a difference is in London is inner London, which is the core postcodes of SW, W, N, E, and SE, and everything, has gone down, whilst the outer London has dragged it up. There are 2 London markets within the M25.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Price reductions. 21,509 price reductions. Let's just remind ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, of how many houses that are present on the market. Around 660,000. So therefore, if we were to apply the number of properties that are being reduced, we are reducing on average about 13% of our stock per month. And again, that graph just shows you there that the band on average is around 12%. So we're just slightly above there. The average.
But it is showing that the industry is working hard to get the transactions moving, isn't it? The energy's going in.
Well, certainly bloody well should be. I mean, at the end of the day, and I know this is a stat that gets mentioned every week, but when we are only shifting 53% of the homes that we list to exchanges, then what the hell's happening to those other 40%, 47%?
Yeah.
I know some of them come back on the market, but what is particularly interesting is this: 93.1% of all sales agreed are sold with the first agent.
Is that the current stat, is it?
Yep.
It's a very interesting number, that, especially in terms of how agents go about their marketing. There's a real heavy marketing commitment to try and get the second bite of the cherry. It is interesting that number's so high at the moment. Well,
but this is the magic thing. Is this? There is an awful lot of effort, but the interesting thing is a house that comes on the market the second time does have approximately a 50%. It's the difference between 59 and 44. I'll have to work it out, but that's the stat. Okay. That's said agreed, not exchanged. Must just state that for the record. So actually, when you can conclude by those different sets of numbers is estate agents are not very good at getting the property the second time because not that many properties do swap agents. Okay, it's not because shed loads leave and go to another agent. It's because not many, when they do go to the second agent, end up selling or a lower amount, and not so many go. I had a chat from a guy in the Northwest says, well, I don't recognize that number. And then we actually went down through his figures and said, number one, do you actually do touting letters? Yes. I said, well, you're already in the top 5% of estate agents because most don't. And then and then we actually walked through how many listings do you get? And then he said that. And then how many sales do you get? And then we actually then looked at what sales he gets from this first-hand stuff. And he actually realized that 20% of his sales were from second-hand properties. I said, mate, you're in the top 0.1% of estate agents. The vast majority.
It's interesting that we're seeing growth in instructions actually, because often one of the complexities is that people are keen to sell but can't find anything to buy. But growing new instructions means there's more opportunity for people to buy, which means there's less excuses not to sell.
Yeah, and it's the right properties. I mean, again, we don't publish graphs on it, but the number of withdrawals is absolutely scary of what is coming off the market. Yeah, and that's just wasted time. So I do feel for estate agents is that you've got competitors out overvaluing and cheap fees, yet you can't be held responsible for that, but it is your responsibility to train yourself on how to counter cheap fees.
Sorry, what are you saying there? Are you saying that overvaluing leads to withdrawals rather than second agents, in that there's becomes, if they can't get the money they thought they could get, they come off the market and don't sell?
They do come off the market. Many do go on to other agents, but they don't sell either.
Because they're still holding out for the price. Yeah.
And again, it comes down to is that, estate agents don't train themselves in human psychology and sales psychology. If you want to persuade a human to do something, you have to emotionally get them to buy into the fact that they're overvalued or the other agent is overvaluing it. If you say to an estate, to a homeowner, your house is quite clearly worth £250,000, and I know the other agent is saying 300, but it is, look, here's the evidence. But humans don't make decisions that way. 19 out of 20 human decisions that get actually made, the emotional side has to say yes first.
Yes,
it's why people buy the Audi and not the Skoda. We all know it's the same car, but we tell ourselves it'd be worth more when it gets sold. Yeah, it might cost you 10 grand. It might be worth.
I think that's slightly different. I'm a firm believer, Chris, that in the absence of value, any customer cannot be chastised for buying the cheapest thing or the wrong thing.
But we're not.
And Audi sells value, doesn't it? It's better, even if it just says your friends will think more of you on the.
All right, but hold on a second. Is it illogical? We all know that
that's the question you're asking. Can a salesperson make the value logical?
No, but this is the whole thing. It's the same reason why we have partners that might buy expensive handbags. The same handbag could be bought on a market stand for £10 as opposed to £500.
Yeah, but what was the value? Carrying things or
value is the perception of what that the punter thinks it's worth. But we're not talking about cheap fees at this point. We're talking about overvaluing.
Well, you think it's worth. I think value is the perception of what the person thinks it is. The price is what they're willing to pay for that value.
Exactly. But again,
that's estate agency. I had a lovely conversation the other evening. I went to a concert. I've just commented on Ian Preston's post about this, actually. I went to a concert, and a couple behind me had a lot of bubbles in the day by the sounds of things. And we're talking about buying a house. And I couldn't help but overhear the conversation, so I introduced myself. And the chap said to me, I can't believe it costs £5,000 to put a pretty picture in the window. Estate agency is ridiculous. And then I sort of had a conversation with them about what estate agents really do. And at the end of the conversation, they were really quite comfortable that £5,000, they were stealing it. But it is interesting that they didn't have any idea of the value of what they were buying. It was a duress purchase, needed a estate agent. They weren't the one with the nicest logo because they couldn't see the value of the agent.
And it's our job to prove the value.
Well, it seems that way.
Well, that's why, again, we're going to be showing the stats later on. But again, you remembering a human being needs a yes from both sides of the brain. You could be as logical as you like, but if you haven't got emotional buy-in, you're only going to get a yes 19 out of 20 times. 1 out of 20 times.
And I think that you're probably right in what you're saying, that overvaluing in that circumstance is bad because the customer only sees one element of value. They don't see a service proposition. They just see a really high price.
We are not talking about the estate agent services at this point. Everything you said is bang on, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about overvaluing. Okay. And if you want a human being to actually agree with you and make a decision, you need emotional buy-in first, 19 out of 20 times. So if you're banging your head against a wall saying, look, here's 5 houses, they're all at 250, then unless you've got emotional buy-in first, you're not going to win. And the way you get emotional buy-in, the secret silver bullet on this, and this is what I teach estate agents to do, because my daytime job is helping estate agents attract landlords and vendors to them, is get emotional buy-in first. And the best way to get emotional buy-in first on overvaluing is to tell a story of a vendor like them in a similar situation who got their fingers burnt because of overvaluing. And then once you've got them bought in with a story, because we can all remember fairy tales and films, we can't remember what our wife told us last night to fill the dishwasher. And we're all guilty of that one.
I feel personally there's a stage before that, which is the sort of 2 ears, 1 mouth principle, which is before you tell your story, you understand theirs, because the price they're willing to accept will be governed by the circumstances they are in.
I would assume that goes without saying.
Okay.
Without listening to their story, how can you take a story from your data bank in your brain to apply a story back to them and then hit them with the logic? That's how you beat overvaluing. Not bang your head against the wall with just stats. Anyway, people haven't come to us. Well, they might have done to listen to us on our proverbial soapbox. Let's get back to them stataroonies. Okay, let's go to sales agreed. And this week we have sold 26,994 properties, which compared to last week is about just over 500 less, because last week it was 27,502.
Yeah.
So we've just...
As ever, we could ignore 21, 22 from our conversation there, anomalous COVID numbers. So actually, the efforts going in and these sales are being agreed, and it's a nice graph trajectory.
Look, there is the what's it called? Turquoise line is 2024, which was 24,900. And the pink line was all the way down at 21,000.
Yeah, pipeline's getting filled up. It's nice.
It is. We'll just share the pipelines now, ladies and gentlemen. Estate agents pipeline, end of Jan, 31st. We always do the sales. This is for the whole of the UK. This is unit numbers. So on the 31st of Jan, going into the 1st of Feb, there were 440,000 properties in the estate agents pipeline, which, as you can quite clearly see there, is nearly 100,000 more than what it was. So that's good for Q1. Our job is getting the buggers through, isn't it?
Yeah, and like, as with the previous graph, if we cut out really October 20 through to, I don't know, let's cut it out to October 22. Then I think we see the real world, and it's nice.
I mean, if you look at the pipelines that we were seeing here, and remember, ladies and gentlemen, it was taking just as long to get a sale through in 17, 18, and 19.
Yeah, but the government's fixing that.
Oh, yeah.
They told us on the internet.
I
saw it with my own eyes. They're fixing that.
I'm telling you here and now, you can fix it yourselves. I've got the data. I'm not able to publish it yet, but I've got the data. Those estate agents who get solicitors instructed on listings, their sales go through weeks and weeks, as in going through to exchange ahead.
Yeah.
When I can publish, and then the other ones, which again I'm a big fan of, is reservation agreements. And don't you dare turn your noses up, ladies and gentlemen, saying they won't work. No, it's because your valuer didn't get buy into them. If you can get your valuer bought into them, you can actually use it as an advantage, not as a barrier to entry to getting listings. Yeah, sorry, cool. We're on the soapbox today, mate, aren't we? Right. Okay, let's get back to those stats because it's called the Stats Show, not the Chris and Kristian soapbox show. Year to date, we're on 123,000 sales agreed, which is 24% ahead of last year. Some of that is because the week started later in Jan. Year to date, by the end of Jan, we were about 12% ahead of the UK. So, but it's still, so I would say probably half of that is because we started late in week one, and half of that is genuinely it's better than 24, and 24 was good. Average price for property selling 360,745. As I said, 26,900. Any thoughts on that?
Nice numbers.
No. Sell-through rate, ladies and gentlemen. This is the percentage of your available stock that you are shifting, and we are shifting about 15% of our properties per month. So if you're not selling 15% of your available stock, then you're below the line. If you're selling more, well done. Go to the top of the class. If you're already there, go to the bottom. You're a lap ahead. There you go. This graph here shows the average asking price of a property coming on the market in red, and the orange line shows the average asking price of a property when she went sale agreed. Do we know what the sale agreed figure is? No, we don't. But what we do know through experience from a Hamptons report, who have access to all their data, their whole group's data, is that number tends, apart from the COVID years, tends to be between 1% and 2% below the asking price. So it does match quite nicely. So it gives you flavour. Why are people, start again. Is an average property at 403 being dropped to 360? No, it's not. It's just that higher priced properties have a lower propensity to sell, whilst the cheaper ones have a higher propensity to sell, hence why the average gets dropped down. The difference, as I said, the difference between average asking price, there we go, 11.8, which is quite nice, which again is just a different way of showing that graph there. Okay. Fall throughs. Fall throughs are back down to 24%, and the fall through we've around that 6,000 mark. The pipeline of the sales falling through, we're losing on average 6% of our residential sales pipeline per month. Hence why, just for your information, 24.2% of houses on average in the last 8 years have fall through from your pipeline. Any thoughts on that, mate?
Horrible number. Hate that number. Shouldn't happen. And like you said, if you've got vendors that won't instruct a solicitor at listing, why not? What are they not telling you?
Guys and girls, please, if there's one thing that's absolutely magic, is getting a solicitor instructed.
I think also there's an element
especially if you're leasehold,
of buyer assessment. Am I introducing the right buyer to my customer? Are they actually going to complete this deal? You're always going to have the influence of surveyors and dramatically changed circumstances. Those things will never go away, and some people just have to stop the journey. But yeah, it's an awful number because it's work you've done that you're never going to get paid for.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, 47% of the homes you put on the market, you're not going to get paid on. In London, this scares me. In London, 64%.
Yeah, I think how much of those figures skewed by multis though?
Not as many as you think.
Okay.
Not as many as you think. Because I have asked that question of my data source. Net sales. So again, net sales here, as I said, we are on, let's just pull the stats up, 20,588. Last week it was 21,316. So we had a slight upturn in fall throughs and a slight dip on sales, but not end of the world. In terms of net sales agreed, 92,229, which is 23% higher than last year. But again, probably half of that is because we started the week later. That number, the gap between 24 and 25 will narrow slightly, but still, it's still probably, if you even net the effect out of the later starting week, still around 15% higher when you
Have you extrapolated that yet for a end of year total?
Too early to tell. Come on.
Alrighty.
Too early to tell. You can't even. No, I'll start calling it. I'll start calling it in July or August.
Alrighty.
Okay, and
I
we'll
might be
get to
back
know
by
what
then.
happened
There you
in
go.
20, but we won't know until probably May that in 25 where we got what I called it. And again, remember this is second-hand stock. This is not new homes, so you can add
Yeah.
that on. So we'll probably end the year, including new homes, on about 1.21 to 1.23. That's my gut reaction.
I thought we were having 500,000 new homes just on their own. Isn't
No,
that what I read in the
no.
manifesto?
That's in the wish box. So
Ah,
I don't know who's building all these homes, and
uh,
I don't know who's going to build them in terms of the labourers. Have you tried to get a workman? Bloody hell.
what was it? Woody Allen say there's no God, but if you try to get a plumber on the weekend, there's just not enough people to do it.
Right, gross sales as a percentage of listings. Again, some people like that stat and the price changes. We've already looked at the number of properties for sale and the estate agent's pipeline. We mention this every week. We won't go into too much detail because we went into a lot of detail last week. But the orange line is the pound per square foot at sale agreed, and that one matches the land registry with a 92% correlation using the Pearson coefficient. What does that mean in English? Basically, follow that orange line, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what's happening to house prices in 5 or 6 months' time. So we can call the bottom of the market, we can call the top. So even if there's one aspect of the property show you should watch for, is have a look at this graph because it will tell you what's happening. Okay, Kristian, that's the end of the first part of the show. Give me some overview of where you see the property market.
I think we've got one of those sort of bizarre stamp duty things. Interest rate drop, but a slight little lift in inflation. And as it would appear, prices are still climbing. People aren't losing money on their investments. They're going up.
We'll finish house prices on about 3% this year.
Yeah, so it's up. I think if you average out inflation, it's probably on the line, isn't it? It's not advantageously up in that sense. But I think what I'm interested in is actually we're talking about the stats in the marketplace, and agents earn fees on the sale of properties, and those fees are linked to the price of property, but the big deal is getting the fee in the bank, not the actual selling price of the property. And looking at the stats you've shown me today, the year ahead looks rather promising. It seems that the activity levels are high, stock's coming onto the market, stock's selling, the pipelines are growing. Those are good things for agents. And yes, if they have their fees eroded slightly by prices not climbing at the rate they need to and fixed costs climbing irrespective of that, doing the volume is what's going to make them the money. And it looks like the volume is there to be done. It looks good.
Indeed. In fact, last year we were talking about the way house prices had risen roughly by what inflation had over a period of about 4 or 5 years. So in real terms, fees had gone up in a nominal monetary value and so therefore in real terms they were about the same. I know a lot of people, saying, but again, we haven't had the account of the national insurance rise and the minimum wage. And again, it's absolutely scary the number of estate agents who are on minimum wages.
Oh, Chris, this is such a difficult conversation. If you're running a business where you're selling talent and you can't afford to pay it more than minimum wage, who are you asking the question of?
I mean, you're so right. I mean, Ian Preston does a presentation, and if you roll the clock back to 2016, the gap between the minimum wage and the negotiator's wage was about 45%, and now it's in single digits.
Yeah, I think that Ian Preston is saying what is needed to be said, and it's the same thing I say all day, every day. People are looking at automation potentially for the wrong reasons. Automation is the key; it is the answer, but it's to automate in order to release the bit you really pay humans to do. The more and more tech we bring into our businesses, the more and more layers we put on their time, and the more and more we erode their capacity to deliver value to customers. So if you take that away, what you leave is really good people that love coming to work to deliver value to customers, and that creates money. They're worth more than minimum wage.
Absolutely bang on, mate. Right. Without further ado, we'll now move on to the second part of the show, is where we go to Eastbourne. Now, if you're an Eastbourne agent, you'll want to watch this. If you're not an Eastbourne agent, but you're suffering from overvaluing or cheap fees from your competitors, then you might want to watch this show, because this part of the show, the reason being is we've got a piece of kit which is independent and that can prove that you're a better estate agent and can beat overvaluing and can beat cheap fees if you use it well. So without further ado, let us go and have a look. Right, okay, so we're going to be using a bit of kit called Insight, ladies and gentlemen. Insight is, in my words, Rightmove Plus on steroids with lasers and glitter balls. It is an amazing bit of kit. It looks at your property market going back 5 years plus the current year we are in. It's from a firm called 20EA. I've got to stress to you that 20EA give me this platform free of charge. I'm happy to declare that. And in return, I get you the stats which you can see in the first part of the show, and also the stats that you can see for Eastbourne today. This bit of kit is available for estate agents. I believe there is a freemium version, although to be honest with you, you don't get much from it. Then for a very modest amount, and I will not mention the figure because I'm not on sales commission, you can have this for your own town up until I think like 10 postcode districts. So nice chunky area. There's a regional version, and then there's a national version, and it is absolutely amazing data that you can use. But please do not mention my name because I'm not on sales commission, although myself and Kristian, we are a bit of fanboys on this, aren't we, mate?
Very much so. I think it's a brilliant application.
Right then, without further ado, let's go and have a look. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to Eastbourne. Now, just for the benefit of everyone, the postcodes that we are looking at are BN 20, 21, 22, and 23. Okay. We are going to spend 20 minutes going through this, and the way it normally happens is that I talk, and then Kristian, you just cut across at any time you see something that looks interesting. We'll just go through the different screens. Primarily, we're looking at residential sales, although there is some small element of lettings at the end, and we'll see how different agents are performing and how well they are doing over lots and lots of different metrics. You will see, and it'll be pretty apparent, what the screens you can use to your advantage if you're trying to be beating agents with overvaluing. If anyone has any queries with regard to the stats, then please do contact 20EA direct. The stats themselves are considered gold standard. There is no one better in the industry, in my humble opinion, that comes anywhere near to what they do. They have access to both your websites, the portals, but also the solicitors, and they are a data firm anyway. So you'll be amazed how the addresses of your properties are out there, and they can collect them. Obviously, it's all GDPR compliant to enable them to work out, are you selling the house? How much are you selling it for? And everything that's involved in that process. So without further ado, let's go and have a look. So over the last 5 and a bit years, the average price, because we're talking from the first of the first 20 to the 11th, which is yesterday, because we're filming this on Wednesday the 12th, 17,993 properties have come onto the market with an average asking price of 343. Let's remember that 343, because we are going to be looking at the posh end as well, just to see if there's any agents who are, well, we've got to see if there is a posh end in Eastbourne. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at the number one agent based over the last 5 and a bit years, which is Town Property.
Family run business from 1989 and seems to do the highest sales volume in town, hey?
Well, this is listings. What is particularly interesting is that there's consistency there. They seem to have a good month and then a bad month. And it almost, everything seems within, almost, you see those two horizontal lines of the 15 or 20, they are staying really within that.
Mm.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, we've been doing this show this is the 3rd year of doing it, and we look at a different town every week. And what you tend to find is that most estate agents tend to stay in their own lane. But then there are agents that drift, and there are agents that pull trees up. So this first agent, Town Property, quite clearly is staying in its lane. Although, I don't know about you, Kristian, would you be concerned if one month you had 10% of the market and then next month 20? I mean, if you look, the stats are at 16% and Fox and Sons are down at 13. But that is quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd want to know. I'd want to
Wide.
know why it oscillates and whether that oscillation is down to how I was managing my data when I was marking stuff SSTC, etc.
Remember, this
Properties
is new
on.
instructions, not
No,
certificate.
no, understood. Sorry, I'm just saying, are there anomalies in the way they manage their data versus other agents in town? Because that's quite an interesting stat. Over that 5-year period,
I mean,
they have done a substantial volume. What is interesting is and I don't know how this is represented on Rightmove, but they market their business as town flats and town property and then town rental. So it could be that I don't know if they're different Rightmove accounts and they're there as different businesses. I don't know.
again, we're looking just at the residential sales. Now, again, isn't it interesting you talked about the way you manipulate data? And what is interesting, Fox and Sons are part of the Connell Sequence Group, who are very famous for their Boxing Day launches. I personally am a big fan of them, which again, a lot of people think is strange.
Of Boxing Day launches or Fox and Sons, sorry.
The Boxing Day commit that I think it's a great way. December's a bit of a squib month. You're working on the agents, the homeowners issues, and I don't want people around, so save them up and drop them on Boxing Day. I ain't got a problem with that.
Okay.
Now people are going to turn around and say, well, Chris, you're going to miss out on the first time buyers. We're all responsible to get anyway. That aside, look at all those spikes. December. Those are all the boxes. So looks like Fox and Sons had an absolutely look at that. That's absolutely cracking.
Yeah.
Okay. So Fox and Sons really did well in December. What is interesting is that they always have a December drop off, but then some agents are waiting until December to launch. So if they've got a more normal, January, they've got more normal January because they've saved up for Boxing Day. You're always going to have a little bit of a drop off, but I'm quite impressed with Fox and Sons there. And in fact, look, the slight drifting down in 21 and 22, but that has been net growing since Jan 23. So big well done to people in Fox and Sons there.
I think it's a data-driven decision, Chris. I don't think there's an emotional perspective to it. Do you get an uplift in views and maybe brochure downloads or viewing bookings or inbound lead inquiries when you launch on specific dates or times? It's data. That's all it is. And if Boxing Day makes that data spike,
hey,
bravo.
It could be Valentine's Day, which this video will be launching on Valentine's. Doesn't it?
I love you. Let's buy a house.
Oh, let us. I'll wait for it. Let us help you fall in love with your new home.
Because then everyone say that Boxing Day is I can't stand you anymore. I'm leaving.
That
Christmas has shown me
put a smile
how
on the
much I
face
need
of
to
senior
go.
management's face. There you go. Ragger and Roberts. Okay, so it looks like we had a bit of a spike there that was COVID. So again, we can just ignore.
On the 1st of April. Wow, that is a very interesting data point.
Okay,
because there we're in the unavoidable transactions, aren't we?
Okay, so again, we have to take that spike with a big pinch of salt. It looks like their market share in 24 has started to drift slightly. Can you see? We will look at the last 12 months in a lot more detail in a second, but it looks, well, again, there might just be a bad couple of months there. Okay. But, when your long-term average is 8% and the last few months we've been at 3, and 5, looks like Ragger and Roberts could do with some more listings there. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not criticizing. I'm just being a data analyst looking at the details. Hunt Frame incorporating flats only.
From a branding perspective, that breaks a couple of rules, but very interesting name.
Okay. So it looks like their sales were around that 5% mark, but again, it looks like they too have had a rough couple of months. Okay. Elmsley and Tarrant. Apologies.
Sorry, can we just see just remind us again of instructions for market over time? I mean, have instructions fallen a little bit? We didn't, or did we answer that question at the beginning? If we look at all agents in the space.
Well, this graph here shows it on a month-by-month basis. Ignore this because obviously we're halfway through it, but you can see here that so that one's in every month is 20, 21 is the blue, orange is 22, 23 is that red again, and then the blue. So you're looking at all those months.
Yeah.
There is a slight uplift from the yellows to the right, to the red, to the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So individual agents with declining stock, there's a reason that belongs to them, not to the market.
exactly.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at the last 12 months to see if there's any young rascals that are climbing up the
Well,
climbing.
there's no obvious self-employed model in there unless I'm missing one.
But again, remember, we are looking at the last 5 years. So if there's some whippersnapper coming up the ranks, we won't see it. So I'm just going to take a photograph of the 5-year figures, and we will look at the 1-year figures in a second. Okay. MZ Tarrant, pretty stable. Again, we can ignore the COVID spike in April 20. Again, slight easing off the last few months. Leaper Stanbrook, well, looks like 21 was bad, but slight growth there. That's what we like to see. So it looks like Leaper Stanbrook are growing. Taylor Engley.
They had a slightly higher price point, didn't they? And they have sort of 50, 60,000.
Yeah, we're going to look at the quartile in a second. Taylor Engley, nice and steady. Move Sussex. Okay. Leaders tend to buy oppositions out. It's not their leaders weren't set up in. So that screams at me a buyout and a rebrand. I'm assuming that, but leaders more Berkshire based. Brook Gamble.
Okay.
We're staying in the lane here, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Eastbourne Property Shop. Ooh, okay.
Big spike there.
Okay. Your move. No,
that's growing.
That's good. Reed and Dean. PB. Let's see what they're doing. Interestingly, Purple Bricks are actually growing. I know they're growing off a low base, but they are growing. Did you see the news that they've got a new boss? Yeah, a couple of days ago. Yep, was in car sales. Now he's running Purple Bricks.
Yeah, I think they just publish the same article every couple of months and change a name, don't they?
How do you know? You're so cynical. Freeman and Foreman, Ginger Sanders, Milestone. We'll go down to 20. Well, we'll just do a few more here. There we go.
I'm not cynical. I quite like Purple Bricks. I think they've been an amazing disruptor of the industry. They've, no such thing as bad publicity. I mean, they're the thing everyone wanted to talk about for a long time before the self-employed model came in and changed the conversation. I think Purple Bricks did an incredible job of refocusing the whole industry.
What is interesting?
Not a cynic.
The biggest they ever got to was 5%, and everyone was thought it was the end of the world. The biggest problem is open rent. They've got 16, 17% of the rental market, considering that half of the properties that they put on the market in the last 2 years were previously on the market with a high street agent. Right.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Let's have a look. And then let's have a look. So Town were number one in the last 5 years, and Town are still number one. And then
may I ask a question of you just on that last statement you made? I always felt that Purple Bricks had proved an interesting point, that you didn't need a high street branch and a hyper visible local presence to grow market share of new instructions. And, I remember back in sort of 2020, 21, I haven't looked since then, but Purple Bricks were averaging 43, 44, 45,000 new instructions per annum. They were always top few in terms of new instructions. And they did that by proving that marketing through television, that sort of stuff, acquired new instructions. You put £1 in the marketing machine, £1.50 comes out the bottom, whereas other agents were still focused on local presence. So I think that was a very good point that Purple Bricks proved. You could also say and we're proper estate agents, and the transparent fees had an impact on the vendor decision making. Yeah. What has open rent proved? Because what's really interesting about the letting space is the value of letting a property is really rather low. There's high demand. Looking after and managing the relationships of tenant, landlord, agent in that sort of tripartite group, that's the big deal of letting agents. That's the hard job to do for a living. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm really interested in your perspective. What have open rent proven, Chris?
It's the other way. It's the right question. You're asking it in the wrong way. All right.
Oh dear. Well, who's the cynic now? Go on.
The point is that when we manage a property, we are like the proverbial swan. gracefully gliding around the lake, but going like that underneath, sorting problems out, and basically making it look like we just like that person at the concert who said it £5 a lot of money to put the photograph of a property in a window. Well, it's this. Landlords are saying, well, 10%. What are you actually doing for your money? You're just whacking it on Rightmove, and you only ring me up when there's a problem. Okay.
That's if they're including free relets, isn't it? You would assume that if they don't include free relets, they get a reversionary cost a couple of times every 5 years, maybe a couple of times every year on 6-month ASTs as we used to know them. The management fee is I will interact and provide a firewall between you and an angry tenant who's sick and tired of light bulbs popping and the lawn not being mowed.
So they said that's where, but again, if they're not, you're only ringing the landlord up when the boiler breaks. So the phone call, every phone call that comes from your agent is, it costs me money. And we're not, when was the last time we sat down with our landlords and reviewed their portfolio? And does it match their investment needs? You would never dream of going to a financial advisor and then not ringing you up. Would you?
But is that the point open rent approving? Or are they
proving that we're not proving our worth?
There's the value proposition is the problem.
Of course it is.
Yeah, how interesting.
We're not proving we're worth our fee.
Okay.
We're bringing them with problems. My daytime job, as you know, but ladies and gentlemen might not be watching, is I help letting agents retain and attract new landlords through data, marketing material, and various different training to help them guide, support, and attract and retain landlords. And I only work for one agent per town, and this works. The thing is, though, if all you're, that conversation we had earlier on, if you're just employing property managers and the only people that talk to a landlord is a property manager, then they're just going to ring them up with problems. When was the last time you, as the lettings director, rang every one of your landlords and said, let's meet for a cup of coffee and let's review your portfolio?
I take your point. I think sometimes the better property managers ring up with solutions, but yes, I do take your point.
Not even solutions, proactive.
Yeah, it's not a 360-degree conversation, is it?
Not property management, landlord management. Anyway, let's get back.
Eastbourne. It's all about Eastbourne. Sorry.
Fox and Sons. Well, there you go. There is the Christmas Boxing Day spike. Ragger and Roberts. Okay, we said they were dropping slightly. Hunt and Frame, Leaper and Stanbrook. You drop in here. They're growing. Brook Gamble, well done. Was Brook and Gamble in the first one? Let's just
yes, they were. Yeah.
Taylor Engley.
They were. Your move was move Sussex.
Yeah, growing. Well done. Your move.
It's sort of a list of usual suspects, I would say, rather than real market disruption.
Again, we'll just go through these because a lot.
You look at Purple Bricks property count over what are we looking at there? 2 full calendar years. Oh no, a year and a month. So 47 is 2-3 people, isn't it? It's a very small operation.
No EXP there. There you go. In fact, I can't see any small, young, EXP or something like that. So there's opportunity. Huge opportunity there. Let's just have a quick look at the upper quartile, just see if there's a market there. I did see there was a Savills crept in on the radar. So just have a quick look at that.
Well, there must be some high value stuff in that area. Anywhere by the sea has areas of super high value, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's have a look. So
it's not a lot. Where are we now? 1 to 2, 280 over how many years? 5 years. Okay, so it's a market. 750. Okay, there you go. So that's the
upper 10%, 6 up. So there's not a posh agent. Let's just look at the £1 million mark. Let's just see who's moving and shaking in that. We'll just wait. That'll just need to. That's interesting. The fact that Rager are number 1. Town properties, they're nowhere to be seen. So obviously Town are staying in their lane. Fox and Sons are also not getting a bite of the cherry, whilst Ragers are on there and a substantial number. I'm impressed. But again, the numbers are going to be a bit all over the place there. Looks like if you've got a posh house, Ragger and Roberts are the daddios.
I'm going to have a look at them. So, how do you spell it? Raga
and
and
Roberts.
Roberts Estate Agency, Spawn. There we go.
Anything
Right.
just
Um,
does it look like a posh agent?
I'm not answering that on telly.
Okay, then I think
Uh,
well, there you go. Do you think they need a new web address? Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, then. Okay. Okay.
they are all of market, Chris. I will say that,
Yeah, but again,
and
they're
all of market.
they're all of
Uh,
market, but they seem to attract the posh stuff. Isn't that interesting?
isn't it just? Yeah, because I mean, we're here 75,000. His current stock 75,000 up to 2.25. That is really all of market
That's
there, isn't
quite
it?
rare. That is really rare.
That's what the
What is
best
also
agents do,
rare,
Chris,
although what
in
is
my opinion.
okay, and again, it is only opinion. What is particularly interesting, there's only one location in the UK where the number one volume agent is also the number one in the upper quartile. And that's Exeter. Here you go. Right,
Used to
let's
be
move
somewhere
on.
else, didn't it?
There you go. Right, let's move on. So, okay, right, well, there's some absolute gold in here, mate. Absolute gold, okay, that is really, really interesting. So here we go. So let's break this down. We're looking at between the 12th of Feb and the 11th of Feb this year. 12th of Feb last year, so that's a year. And there's lots of different columns here, and they should be looked at in a standalone basis. Okay. The real magic here, though, are these four columns here, ladies and gentlemen, which is exchanged and withdrawn.
Can we please order by exchange percentage? That's an interesting tale.
We can, but then it is going to show us some of the really small agents where the number doesn't look. I can't,
Yeah, okay. Filtered by new instructions then. Oh,
but,
you can do that, can't you? Take out the ones and twos.
I would have to download it off a spread
Don't
Excel
worry, don't worry,
spreadsheet.
don't worry, don't worry.
All
It's too
right.
much. I've done that exercise myself. It's too much work. Fine. Interesting.
Right. Okay. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. You're all interested with your new instructions and sale agreed. Fair goes. Beat yourself to death on them. But this is where the magic happens. These four columns here. You see, a property will only leave an estate agent's for two reasons: exchanged or withdrawn. And 20EA know how many properties have it left your books exchanged and how many have left your books withdrawn. If you add up the exchanged on each line, they will add up to 100%. Right? So in the last year, in those postcodes, town properties have the number of properties that have left their books has been 597, 360 plus 237, of which 360 of them have exchanged contracts, which means town property can go out and say, if you put your house on the market with us, you have a 6 in 10 chance or a 60.3% chance of getting moved, whilst Fox and Sons are at 44.47. Well, 60 over 40 is about a third more. It is a third more. So town property could say, if you put your house on the market, if they're up against Fox, you can see how powerful this is, ladies and gentlemen. You've got independent data that said you have a 33% more chance or a third greater chance of actually moving with us if there were town-owned property against Fox and Sons. I am not calling Fox and Sons. We are just looking at the data, okay? The average in the town is 50.27. And then you've got all the data points down here. It's nice and tight. Emsley and Tarrant, I'm a bit concerned at 36. We'll just move down. Now, there you go. Phil Hall at 82. Big round of applause there, Phil Halls. That is an amazing number. It's very rare to get an 8 in front of it. So again, Phil, if I was you, I would be singing from the hymn sheets. Over 8 out of 10 homes that I put on the market, I'll get you moved, whilst the average in the town is 50.2%. This is powerful data, mate, isn't it?
I couldn't agree with you more.
Powerful data.
It is when you look at the bills.
And this is the thing, is that this, I mean, there is a very, very, very well-known estate agent who nationally had an exchange number that blew everyone out the water. Oh, I'm not going to mention their name here, but they blew
As in a small independent?
no, as
Oh,
in as a national agent.
sorry, I see what you mean.
All
Okay,
right.
I misheard you. Yeah.
And for years, their exchange ratio blew the big boys up, blew the fellow big boys and girls out the water. And they had access to this data. I know they had this package.
Right.
And if they actually used that data and used it in a marketing technique, they could have turned around and said, you're more likely, you've got a 25% greater chance of selling with us than any of the other big boys.
Mm.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. But they didn't. And that's the thing is this. The truth is in the data, isn't it? But estate agents are not very good with data.
Also, you look at that number there in terms of exchange. So whatever number of pounds there are wrapped up in payroll and fixed cost suppliers, etc. For every pound you spend, only 50.27 was worth it.
Come back, you're right. Come back and answer the original question, though. Why are agents not very good at using data to prove their point?
I don't know how to. If I go back to the conversation I had the other evening, I wonder if they don't realize which point they're best proving sometimes.
Yeah, and remember, we still need to get the emotional sell first.
And I wonder sometimes whether pictures of other people's homes looking beautiful, video tours, doll's house walkthroughs, floor plans, the glossy, colorful, exciting marketing piece is probably easier to talk about and probably charms customers more. It's easy to look at, it's easy to think about, and we do buy with our eyes, that eye line is byline piece. So maybe it's the easier conversation to have, especially when we link that beautiful marketing to higher prices and potentially faster transactions.
I don't disagree with you, but when everyone's whipping out a brochure printed on a nice printer with fake blue skies at the back and a floor plan, we all look the same and we all sound the same. And credibility is gained by the questions you ask, not by the statements you make. And
Well, I suppose, you could say it's how you substantiate the promises you do make.
exactly.
I can do this, and here's how.
Earlier on in the show, we talked about overvaluing and the solution we gave using the power of story.
Yeah.
What one does is to beat overvaluing. Number one, you tell the story that's very similar to the story that matches your vendor sat in front of you. So you were so right. You do actually have to listen to what their story is and then go into your database in your head and find out a story that's similar. You then get them to emotionally buy into the fact that their property is overvalued. And then you then hit them logically with, you beat them up two ways. Number one, you show them the actual evidence of properties.
Yeah.
And then you back that up double fold by showing them stats like this and says, I'm not saying this. Don't believe a word I say.
The data says it.
The data says this.
I had a nice conversation recently, and I'll sort of mention whom because of why, but we were actually talking about empowerment and that actually overvaluing will never go away because customers potentially overvalue in their own minds. Mine's worth more than theirs because it's better looking, on a better plot, got a better conservatory. I've just had the driveway done, whatever substantiation they give themselves. And we were talking about empowerment and that actually there's nothing wrong with saying a vendor, these are the three prices. There's tomorrow morning, 2 months, and 2 years. And empowering them to make their own choice about which of those price targets they want to look at, which is sort of, I guess, a slightly different approach because it is combating the overvaluing and saying, well, yeah, people are going to tell you it's worth 50 grand more than it is. But the time over which you might achieve that, the pain on the journey, the withdrawal likelihood and your exposure to risk between SSTC and completed and paid are so much higher at those values. You're better looking at the data around what transacts at what price. But I think it's empowerment rather than just saying, no, it will not achieve that price. Use my price because I'm not the overvaluing agent. And there are faces on the internet who are quite volatile and verbose about that. And I'm not sure I agree because if the vendor is in a risk profile around equity versus debt, the house they need to buy, the fact they need to release cash, their ears might be closed to data and only open to that one big number that liberates them from the pain they are within, the pain of not being able to afford what they want, the pain of not releasing cash, the pain of mortgage
Then
debt.
you as an estate agent need to decide, is it worth you taking that person on? You are right. It is the case of, this is the price, I'm right. You're basically telling them the story, showing them the evidence, and then leaving the decision up to the homeowner.
Yes, and we're not looking at the P&Ls of the agents listed here
No,
who
we're
have
not.
wildly
We
different
don't know what
exchange
these
rates.
agents are charging.
Well, more importantly, you don't know what the P&L looks like in terms of fixed costs and payrolls, but it might be that at a 44.47% exchange rate, they're actually making more money than everybody else. You just don't know.
Oh, I mean, in London, there is one very famous estate agent that only exchanges contracts on 27% of the properties they list. They are a massive top 5 player, but
We know that's Maltese, don't we? That's definitely Maltese.
okay, but the other big agent that's just the same size as them exchange contracts on 54% of the houses they put on the market. That ain't multi.
They must have a better website. I don't know what my answer is to that.
Oh, come on. Yeah, okay. Look, the magic thing is, if you look at the big agents in London, okay, the exchange ratios are as low as 24 and as high as mid 50s. And these are not, we're not talking about 1 or 2 woman band agencies.
No,
we're
I
talking
know who you
about
mean.
50 branch networks.
Cut and thrust, dog eat dog type world, isn't it? That.
Anyway, let's get back onto Eastbourne. Let's just see who. Let's just see if there's.
So, what have we learned about Eastbourne, Chris? It's an interesting market.
We're halfway through. I think.
Oh, sorry, we're half learned. Right.
Right. Let's just see who's got the full 31% fall through, which is higher than the national average at 24. That's quite high. So, is anyone? So, Hunt Frame have a high fall through rate. But then they have a decent exchange rate. That's not bad. Let's see who's. Wow! Look at this. Town Properties are changing their price on 64% of houses they list. Fox and Sons, 7 out of 10 houses. These are huge numbers.
Right now, those numbers up there, the price changes, they're really interesting. Are they price changing because the vendor knew to expect it based on their marketing price strategy? Or are they price changing because the vendor has been upset by what they couldn't achieve? Because one is very, very different from the other. One is liberated and empowering. The other is recovering from tall tales.
Okay, right. This is what the stats are telling me, but we'll have to look at the next screen in a second to see if we're backed up, because I might be wrong here. What this is telling me is Town and Property are overvaluing their properties because they're getting their prices down, but because their exchange ratio is really good, I'm going to bet you £1 to a penny they're doing ethical overvaluing. They're putting their property on the market at a higher price, but they're dropping their price quite quickly within 2 or 3 weeks and getting the property away. That's what that's telling me. And if that is the case, I think that's great estate agency.
I like to hear that.
What do you like to hear? The fact
what you've just said, that I don't like the term necessarily ethical overvaluing. I think honest and clear pricing strategy is probably a better term than ethical overvaluing, but that's just my opinion. But what I do think is that, having an open conversation about that pricing strategy is really very important. And if the vendor wants more and wants to try the market for more and knows they may fail and is primed for a price reduction and is ready to do it and has agreed to do it and is engaged with that process, bravo, onwards.
Yeah, because what you tend to find, because I do this show every week, ladies and gentlemen, is this. If you have a high percentage in the price changed, you normally have a lower exchange, unless you have the thing where you're dropping the price really quickly. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, if a property sells within the first 25 days of it being on the market, it has a 94% chance of getting through to exchange. If a property takes more than 100 days to get a sale agreed, that sale has a 56% chance of getting through. And these are
that varies by price packet, doesn't it? If you actually examine that at the upper end of the market, you probably see a different picture.
Not as much as you think, because lower price properties do. Remember, I did query the price band and it wasn't huge.
Right.
Because remember, it's if the property sells.
Yeah, there is a higher
chances of
withdrawal
going through.
cancellation rate at the top end, isn't
Yeah.
there? So fair enough. Yeah.
Higher price properties do have a lower chance of selling, so that it doesn't enter this that argument because they didn't sell agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Fair one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's high. That's 71. Who's that? Move at Sussex. And do you have a lower exchange? Well, it's just over the average. No, Oakfield 38. Do you have a 69? So you can see I'm liking town property. Let's just see. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go on and look at the overvalue.
So do the customers, I think.
Right, here we go. So a lot of stats going on here. There's one thing. I think there's one. It's not a criticism. Is that it's a bit of a data geek's heaven. But so let me paint a picture and let me explain what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen. I'll put into the order of instruction levels. The number here is almost irrelevant at this point. What happens here is they look at all the properties that have left your books in the last 12 months, and they apply two filters to it. The first one is when your property came onto the market, what was the difference between what the house came on the market for versus what they thought 20EA thought the house was worth using their automated valuation model, a bit like a Valpal figure. Now, there is a bit of overvaluing, 1.25, but if you noticed here, this is all nice and tight. There's no one agent here that is being stupid with their overvaluing. Okay, Oakfield, slightly higher, but not silly. If you were in London, this would be like a castle test, like a, up and down.
Yeah.
Be all over the shop.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is really interesting. The price achieved. So what did you achieve for the property versus your original asking price? So these are all really tight. This is really rare. So they're all slightly overvaluing. There goes. But nothing scary.
Have you cut the builders out? Is there no new homes in this?
I cut the builders out on the first one. There's no new.
Got it.
I don't think the new homes come in on this one.
Yeah. Okay.
And then in terms of the overvaluing, in terms of what you achieved from the original asking price, this is all really, really tight around that 5% mark. There's some that are even better. See, the problem though with percentages is that the net effect is that, well, it's plus 1.59, less 5.31. What does all that mean? So what 20EA do is they say, right, if everyone put on a £350,000 house, what would every agent achieve for it based on what they thought it was worth and subsequently knocked down? Look how tight everything is. That's really good to see.
Especially when you get to the bottom there.
Okay, but again, when the numbers are really low, the numbers too tend to go all over the place. Okay, so we're looking at the bigger agents in the town. So, if I was Leaper Stanbrook, I could turn around. Leaper Stanbrook are the ones that are slightly in the top 10. Well, okay, Move Sussex 341 against 336. So Move Sussex could say we get they get £9,259 more. Sorry, that's leaders. Let's go to Move Sussex. £4,943 more than the average Eastbourne agent for an average Eastbourne property worth 350. You can see where this data's gone. What this is telling me is this: everyone's sensible with their overvaluing slightly, and then the buyers are dropping their prices a bit when it comes to selling, because the most on average Eastbourne homeowners are taking on average 5.11% less than their original asking price. So what I'd say there is town property are overvaluing, but actually subsequently working their stock and getting it through, whilst the other agents who are overvaluing are not working their stock so well, and therefore their exchange ratios are much, much lower here.
I think I think it's an interesting market. It's a tight market. I think there's some really good players in the market. And I think of those good players in that market, town property are very much in touch with their local audience. I think boards beget boards, and they are a well-known local provider of estate agency services. And I think they do a bloody good job, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two big agents slugging it out, them and Fox and Sons, and I would be using this data. Now, if I was town property, you have to be really careful with the way you portray this data so you don't get slapped by the ASA. And again, if you're going to buy the data off 20EA Direct, they'll tell you how to do it. but also my daytime job, and this is to any agent in Eastbourne. My daytime job is I'm a property market analyst, and I help estate agents attract landlords and vendors to them. If your market share is not growing, or it's dropping, or you want more landlords and homeowners to use you, then please do shout out to me. I'm going to be keeping in contact with you via email, all of you, on a regular basis, keeping you updated on what's happening in Eastbourne. And if anyone wants to give me a call, my details are on those emails. And as I said, I have sent an email. My colleague Ricky has sent an email out to all of you to the branch mailbox. So if you haven't received that, then do reach out to me. It might have gone into spam. Let's just have a quick look at how well the agents are shifting properties. And again, look, this is nice. Town and property on average are taking 179 days from new instruction to completion. Fox and Sons are taking 198 days. Ragger and Roberts, who are number 3, let's just go and look at Ragger and Roberts. They're taking 227. So again, have you noticed how all of the conveyancing times, which is the pink lines, are all pretty similar? So there's not as if someone's getting sales through quicker. It's just how long it takes to sell. And it looks like Town and Property are the daddy-os of that. Although Hunt and Frame, you're doing really well on that. You're only taking 59 days. Interesting, in the last year, 76 days is the average time it takes to get from new instruction to sale agreed. And 119 days, which is actually the UK average, absolutely bang on at 119 days. We'll just look at what the figures for 23 were. We'll just have a look. 66 days. So the market is slowing from 66 to 76 days. And the conveyancing has gone down from 120, as I said, to 119. Let's just go and look at lettings, and then we'll leave these, ladies and gentlemen, in peace. So here we go. Let's start off with lettings. Let's just have a quick look at the average rent. The average rent in Eastbourne in 2020 was 837. And in the last year, it's gone up to 1,203.
My goodness me. That's punchy.
Right, let's have a look. Let's just wait for this to come back. Here we go. So
you were thinking leaders may have grown with market share through an acquisition strategy, which is a great way of doing it.
No. Okay, that is, if the acquisition took place, it was before 2020.
Okay.
Or 20A have picked up that there's been a transition and moved the records over.
Got you.
Normally they don't, so I'm suspect, but I don't know unless they've got some new data. Let's have a look. So what you tend to find, we don't have levels of, we don't know the numbers.
Excuse me.
We don't know their portfolio size, but the number of new instructions has a direct relationship to portfolio size. So you can see if portfolios are growing or shrinking generally by the trend. Quite nice to steady that one. So actually there's a slight amount of growth there. Okay. Open rent from 5% to around 12%. So you're not as bad as the UK, but bear that in mind. Town Property, who were number 1 agents for Resi Sales, nice and steady. Equity Residential, slight drifting downwards.
You say that about open rent. What's interesting is that infrastructurally speaking, and probably leaders operate a model that's not dissimilar, but their operational footprint in that town will probably be of a lower cost than that of, say, a local independent. So in terms of scale growth, to go from 5 to 12% is actually a big achievement, because their cost base to go from 5 to 12% probably hasn't changed that much.
What, open rent?
Yeah.
Well, it isn't. It's just a web-based system, isn't it? So
I think it's a little more, but I still think that their operational cost base has probably remained proportionally lower than that of a competitor trying to grow in the same space.
You're right. Northwards, slight drifting downwards. Eastbourne Property Shop growth, good to see. Elite Lettings, Home Sweet Home, Property Rentals, Martin & Co, Eastbourne Lettings, Ginger and Sanders, great name. McGregor.
These are only averaging 40 lets per year though, aren't they? So it's less than 1 a week.
So good stats there. Right. Okay. So let's leave it at that. Final thoughts.
I enjoyed our little trip to Eastbourne. Nice tight market there. And it seems to me there's some really good agents in Eastbourne working very hard for their customers, actually. The data was certainly the AVM to achieved price strategy comparison tool was really quite tight, nice lines, no great big, having to sort of extend the graph across the page type agents. So really interesting. And nice to see that in terms of stock and sales agreed, that activity for the year of 25 seems good so far, which means I'm expecting your punt come, I think you promised it by July, did you, or August, to be just over the million mark, Chris.
Remember, that's second hand. Remember, so we've got to add the new ones on top.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting you to say.
At the rate we're going, I think we'll finish on about 1.3-ish.
Do you? Wow. Okay.
But remember, we're going to finish on 1.2, 1.23s this year.
But yeah,
again,
for the year behind,
there's a lot of variables before then. Okay, Kristian, awesome as ever. Thanks for being a fantastic guest. Always love you. We'll see you in a couple of months when you return back onto the Stats Show. But thank you for watching the show. We'll be back next week for another property market Stats Show with a different town. Remember, if you're an Eastbourne agent, I'll be keeping in contact with you. And if you need any help or guidance or support on how to use this data that I've shown you, and also to grow your estate or letting agency, please do give me a shout. Do remember, I can only work for one agent per town, and I'm not working for an agent in Eastbourne. So thank you for your time today. Thank you, Kristian, and thank you for watching.
Thank you, Chris.